All right, guys, welcome back. So last time we talked about this sympathetic, parasympathetic seesaw that triggers a negative set of consequences, a negative set of a domino effect of consequences that leads to a dysfunctional metabolism. Now, today what I want to talk about is what is the first step? Like, what is it that actually causes this, okay? And what causes this is stress, okay? Stress is the thing that causes this, for that first domino to fall, okay? And for that seesaw to fall in the sympathetic nervous system. Now, when I say the term stress, this is such an ambiguous term. You know, a lot of people go like, oh, great, there she goes talking about stress again. And the thing about stress is that what you want to think about is it doesn't mean that it's an emotional stress. You don't have to feel sad or overwhelmed or anxious in order to have stress. Really, what I want you to think about when it comes to stress is metabolic tension. When there's too much metabolic tension put on the metabolism. And in particular for people like you and I, the fit addicted community, this means chronic dieting and excessive exercise, okay? And so what I want you to think about when it comes to stress is think of a parked car, okay? So you have this car parked in your garage and you start revving the engine and while it sits in park and you just have the pedal to the metal the whole entire time and you never let up, okay? Well, eventually, at some point, you're going to do damage to the engine. You're going to run out of fuel, the engine's going to start to overheat, right? And things are just going to start to break down at some point. And this is very similar to your metabolism, okay? And when you push too hard for too long. And the thing about this that can be frustrating for a lot of us is that a couple of things. First off, we are all very different in how much stress we can handle, right? Some people can only rev that engine for an hour. Other people can actually rev it for 24, 36, 48 hours a week before they start to notice these negative consequences. And the other thing to keep in mind is as we age, our resilience to stress also declines. So we can't react or handle and respond to stress in the same way that we used to. And so this can be very frustrating as we see, some of the best athletes really going hours and hours a day and they do just fine. Or, the way that we used to perform, we really can't perform that way. And we wonder why, okay? And this is really why. So keep in mind that everybody's very unique in how, not only how much they can handle as far as stress, but how well they can react and bounce back, okay? But this metabolic tension from chronic exercise, and when I mean chronic, that could, again, it could just be doing a CrossFit WOD, going hard every single day. And I have nothing against CrossFit, but I do think that there is a lack of education out there that you can or you should push to, to failure or go as hard as you can day in and day out without any repercussions. And as I've noticed, from my experience, I know that a lot of us really can't last that long. Some of us more than others for sure, but a lot of us can't do that day in and day out, and we tend to either find ourselves in burnout or injury, or we start to see metabolic dysfunction and have a high difficulty in losing body fat and having a strong metabolic rate and good digestion. So we're going to talk about that real quick. So we have this seesaw. It starts off with stress that tips it over into the sympathetic side. That is the first domino effect to lead you into basically metabolic dysfunction. And then there's going to be different degrees of metabolic dysfunction, which we're going to go into now. So what I want to talk about is, okay, so let's say we that first domino has fallen. How does it start to affect your metabolism, your body, right? After, is it from acute stress versus chronic stress? So what begins to happen is, first off, this stress, believe it or not, it actually impacts the brain, okay? Stress happens at the level of the brain. So this is your brain, the big circle, and then right below it, it's like the stem of the brain at the base of the brain. It's called your hypothalamus pituitary gland. And this stress actually impacts at the brain level. And when there is too much stress that happens, it starts to irritate the brain. And the brain doesn't really like that. And when that happens, it starts to down-regulate its communication with the rest of the metabolism. And the rest of the metabolism being your adrenals, your thyroid, your ovaries or testes for guys, and then your digestion, okay? So acute stress, we actually can notice this for anybody who actually competes or even just does like a really hard workout, like a competition or a hard fitness event. We'll notice that this acute stress from that kind of a workout, that performance that was required, will impact your adrenals, right? You'll feel really run down after something like that, like a competition or something. Well, that's acute stress happening at the level of the adrenals, okay? And that's fine. Acute stress is good for you, actually. But when it starts to, when you push for too long, does it start to impact different parts of the metabolism in a negative way? So the first thing to take a hit is your adrenals, like I said. After that, it then starts to impact your thyroid, okay? So your thyroid hormone isn't produced and it doesn't respond to stress as well, and your metabolic rate starts to decline. And what that means is that you just can't handle as many calories. You can't eat as many calories and and still be able to be in a deficit. So the amount of calories that you're burning, even though you might be spending the same exact amount of time on a treadmill or something, and the treadmill says 100 calories burnt for how long you were on there, you may have actually not burned that much because your metabolic rate has gone down. Okay, and this is what actually happened to me when I got hypothyroid. I could not handle. I would gain fat off 1,700 calories, where I used to be, push it up to 2,500 calories before I started to gain fat. And so this is a big problem and starts to lead to fat gain. Okay, after the thyroid is hit, then the ovaries start to take a hit, and this is where women will start to notice irregularities in their menstrual cycle, and guys will notice a decreased level in their testosterone. Okay, and this is actually seemed to be a very more common thing these days is these irregularities and low hormone levels, and also you're a decreased libido, so your desire to have sex also goes down. Then after the ovaries and testes are hit, your digestion takes a hit, okay? And so what happens here is you aren't able to digest food the way that you once did. And if you can't digest food, then you can't absorb the nutrients and minerals that your body needs to actually recover from the stress to begin with. And so as you see, when all of these things start to go, and then the digestion, you aren't getting the nutrients to repair the entire metabolism in your cells, this further leads to more stress, and it becomes a vicious cycle that you get caught up in, okay? So this is basically, in a nutshell, what's going on with your metabolism, and we're going to be talking about the how to treat it and the signs and symptoms that you should start to recognize to know what state you're basically in. But I'll tell you, there's 3 different states as far as when your metabolism starts to become damaged. The first one is metabolic compensation. Okay, so this is for example when you do a diet, right? And you'll start to notice that, you know, after 7 days or so, your hunger goes up, your energy starts to go down, and your cravings for, you know, high calorie foods goes up. Okay, so this is the first stage of you know, stress or metabolic tension on the system. The second stage, which everybody hits this. Okay, everybody hits compensation, metabolic compensation from a diet or maybe doing a competition, and you can bounce back pretty easily after that. The second stage, if you continue to push harder through more exercise or more dieting with willpower, the next stage is resistance. Okay, so this is when you're going to start to notice issues such as even more decreased energy, or even higher rates of hunger, like you're just kind of out of control. You'll start to notice a decrease in libido here. Again, more cravings. You might start to develop some gas and bloating at this level, okay? So foods that you once ate or a protein shake that you used to drink is now giving you issues, okay? So this is also a pretty common stage, all right? And again, it happens just from continuing to push harder on the metabolism. The third stage and the final stage is metabolic damage. And this is the stage that I ended up finding myself in, okay? This is the point where you're going to start to run into autoimmune diseases and food sensitivities and you know, excessive adrenal fatigue or weight gain. Weight gain is usually going to happen right around this metabolic damage point. And you might, in the resistance part, you know, in metabolic resistance, your weight may have plateaued here. And maybe it started to come up, or it's just, you know, you're just not getting any weight loss for as hard as you're working. And then when you get to the damage part, metabolic damage, this is when, you know, weight starts to go up and you really start to see a lot of different issues, you know, like gut and bloating, you know, hypothyroid, autoimmune diseases, adrenal fatigue, pre-diabetes. And this is the stage that I found myself in. So those of you guys that know my story, from too much training, I stressed my way to all of this, all right? So I got adrenal fatigue, hypothyroid, poor digestion, and about almost 20 pounds in 2 months, and also pre-diabetes. So just as you can eat your way to getting fat, you can stress your way to getting fat. And so we're going to talk about what you need to be looking for so that you don't really go past this compensation state, right? That you can catch these signs and symptoms and know what to do about it.